So this is part 3 of my series, the Prepper Purge. And every video has been a different facet of it, a different phase of it, I guess, if you want to say that. So if you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, I'm going to link to those so you can go check those out. Again, they're different topics, but all around this Prepper Purge idea. And so today I want to talk a little bit about, or in this video, I want to talk about those who have given up, those preppers who have given up. And I think there's a couple of different reasons for this and the reasons that this happens. So first of all, I think what happens is we get burnt out. And so we come into preparedness because of fear. And we see, maybe it's the big EMP, the super volcano, the polar shift, whatever it might be. Maybe we see a movie, we see something, and it causes us to look into other things. And we realize that, our world is fragile. And so we start preparing, and we prepare out of fear. I know, that has happened to many, many people. And so when you do that, you have this uptick of fear, and you're working really hard to figure out how you can mitigate, the problems and the things that you might see. And then after you're in it for a little bit, you realize, okay, well, nothing's happened, right? The EMP hasn't come. Maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been years. The EMP hasn't hit. The volcano hasn't. You hear about all these volcanoes going off, but nothing really ever happens, right? And so you hear about these things, and then it's like nothing happens, and you're like, why in the world should I continue prepping? It's like people keep talking about the fear, and really sometimes the preparedness community doesn't do a real good job, because we continue talking about the next big thing, right? It's like this thing, the blood moons, right? The blood moons, or Y2K, the blood moons, and this, the government's doing this, and all these things happen. And then when nothing comes about, it's like, okay, well, the next thing is coming up. The economic collapse is coming up. And so all these things, it's like from one thing to the next, and we get this preparedness fatigue kind of kick in. And then eventually people are like, I'm tired. You can't live in fear for long, because it wears you out. It stresses you out. It drains you, right? And so I think that's one of the big things that happens, because we don't necessarily transfer the reason why we are truly preparing. It's all based on fear, and you don't want to base your preparedness on that. I think another thing that winds up happening a lot of the times in preparedness is that people get into preparedness because of a hobby. It's kind of like, hey, this is kind of cool, and so maybe firearms or whatever. I've always said that firearms and gardening are like gateway drugs to preparedness, and I think it's true, because you start getting into that world. Eventually you're going to read an article, you're going to hit a forum, you're going to something is along those lines, right? Someone's going to talk to you about that. So I think that is one of the things, is people get into it as a hobby, and maybe you're into firearms, and you're doing that for a while, and you build up your big arsenal of firearms, and then it's like, all right, well, I'm kind of done with this, right? Maybe you're spending a lot of money or whatever, and it's just kind of like that hobby, just like a bunch of other hobbies. Life happens, and you start to go on to other things, and I think that's one thing that winds up happening for a lot of people as well. I think another thing that happened, and those of us that are in the preparedness community that run websites and podcasts and different things like that, I know other people have mentioned this, is when Donald Trump got into the White House, it was all of a sudden, it was like, oh, we got a conservative president, and he is going to take care of everything. He is not going to be the same as Obama. He is not going to pass the same kind of, he's not going to want to do the same kind of laws and different things like that. We can now relax. And the truth is that, the guys in power, it doesn't matter if they have a little R behind their name or a D behind their name. Don't allow that to be the thing that causes you not to prep. Because these guys, they all want power, right? And I know there's diehard people that are like Republican conservatives, and it's like Donald Trump is the best thing. And I'm not saying if he is or not. I just think that when you get into Washington, things begin to change. And even Donald Trump, some of the things that he said was that were going to happen hasn't. And he's done some things that have been really good, right? As a Christian, as a believer, I really like his stance on Israel. But then for other things he's done, and he's like, he said some things about firearms and laws that should be passed, and you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't coincide with other things that you have said. So you can't put your trust in the politicians. And I think that's one thing that we saw. If Hillary Clinton would have been elected president, man, there'll be so many things going on that people in the preparedness community, who most of them are lean right and are conservative and stuff like that, I think the preparedness community would be going very, very strong right now, and people would be all over it. But that's just my opinion. Again, I saw a big fall off when Donald Trump, it was almost exactly like November, you started seeing the numbers drop. Now, they've all leveled off and things like that, but there was still a drop, and it still hasn't recovered. I believe the minute that there's something big that winds up happening, I think we're going to see a big resurgence. So those of us who have websites and those of us who have podcasts, stay strong. That's why I'm trying to, if you go back and you listen to part 1 of it, those of you, don't give up your websites. Don't let them just fall apart. Give them to somebody if you're done and you don't want to pay for the hosting anymore or whatever, because I think there's going to be a big resurgence when things start falling apart. Because here's the deal, our world is fragile and nothing has changed. The fundamentals of economics and all that kind of stuff, nothing has absolutely changed. And so the things that got a lot of people into preparedness and maybe is kind of like backed off, those things are still the same, man. And so I want to encourage people out there to stay strong on that. And here's the thing, you don't prepare out of fear. You prepare because it makes sense. So if we were to talk to our grandparents, or maybe even some of us, our great grandparents, and we don't even use preparedness or preppers, and we just say, this is what I'm doing. I'm putting some food away. I'm putting some water away. I'm putting some food away just in case food's not there in the grocery store. I'm putting some water away in case the tap doesn't, when I turn on the tap, it doesn't work. I'm buying a firearm, or I'm buying a means to defend myself, or I'm putting means of defense, layers of protection in my home to defend myself. And if you were to talk like that, they would be like, well, yeah, all that stuff makes sense, especially those of our parents who went through the Great Depression. The food in the pantry, man, that would speak volumes. Like, yeah, that is a real good idea, is putting away things that would last for a while. And so preparedness is not about the fear. It's not about that one event. It is a lifestyle that you just prepare. And it doesn't need to be all full-blown, hey, I'm full-blown prepper guy, always preparedness, always prepper, everything, right? It's like, there needs to be a balance in what we do and how we live our lives. Yeah, go out to your kids' baseball games and football games and go on vacation. And yeah, there's always that thing. I know, because it happened to me. It's like, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to be far away from my preps. I'm not going to be able to take the things that I normally take because I'm going to be on a plane or whatever, and that is kind of a little bit scary, but there's things that you can do to help that, right? And you can always be prepared and have research and all those different types of things. But preparedness is all about the lifestyle. Preparedness is all about, looking ahead and having a good life, having a life that you're able to rest and be at peace. It's like, if the poop hits the fan, well, then I feel comfortable that I'm going to be able to provide for my family. I'm going to have food. I'm going to have water. Those of us who live on the coast, we prepare for a hurricane. It just makes sense. Those of you that live up north and you have blizzards that could just come on, it makes sense to prepare and have supplies, So preparedness just makes sense. And maybe we need to stop calling it preparedness, preppers, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we just need to be smart, and maybe we just call it common sense. But don't give up. There's a lot of people that have given up. I remember not too long ago reading a comment, and someone was responding to a member of the preparedness community who writes articles, and they're like, nothing's happened. I've been waiting for this to happen, and you said this was going to happen, and nothing has happened, and I've purchased all this food, and I've purchased all this water, and nothing has happened. And that's not the reason why we prep, right? So I know that the fear porn is out there, the doom porn is out there. We got to be careful. You got to read it and read between the lines, and truly don't go by headlines. Read the articles, read between the lines, and maybe every once in a while you just kind of stay away from that. But you instead focus on, what's everyday preparedness or being self-reliant looks like. So anyway, guys, I hope that's been a blessing to you. Hey, if you haven't seen part 1, part 2, I'm going to link to it so you can go check that out. And if you wouldn't mind, there might be people that that are preparedness minded, or maybe maybe they're waning and thinking about giving up, or maybe there's people out there that don't prep because they think it's all about fear mongering, and they think it's all about the craziness and stuff like that. So let me ask you if you would share this video with them. If you could share this out on social media, and again, going back to what I said in part 2, right, about the whole social media thing, but we can share things out while we still can. But if you can do that, I would greatly appreciate it. So thanks so much, guys. God bless. Have a good one.